Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Was the lunch good? They used to call the session after lunch the suicide session. I'm so glad I got it. And, oh, I even forgot. The next speaker will be the easiest to announce because it's me. So, welcome to my session. And we're going to be talking about the 5 things every Excel user should know about Power BI. Right, so I don't know if you know this, Power BI is the new kid on the block. He's always got the best bike, the best everything, right? But in all honesty, for this session, my biggest sort of wish is that you guys don't even treat Power BI or Excel as 2 totally separate things. Mainly due to the fact that there's been so much happening in Excel, particularly with Python, with everything. But the 2 things that are kind of staples of Excel, of modern Excel to me, are Power Query, Power Pivot. Those 2 changed Excel and brought it to a whole new league. Now, the reason I'm saying this is, what's Power BI? It's Power Query, Power Pivot. DAX is just Power Pivot formula language, right? And then some fancy charting on top of that, right? But Power BI does have some subtle differences where it really matters. And what this session is going to be about is those differences. And I think they're important to kind of register, because sometimes when you're doing just planning a project or planning some reporting, it's cool if you're aware of what can do what, right? So that you know which platform to choose, considering what you want to achieve. The next slide we're just going to skip over because we were 5 minutes too late. So my name is Gašper Kamenšek. Oh, and I need to tell you this. So I'm an Excel MVP from Slovenia, which, as far as I know, is the only country in the world that has the word love in the name. There you go. And that's that. So this 5 things are what we're going to consider and actually try to think about. The best news of the day is this is the last slide you're going to see. From here on out, no slides. But this is what we're going to be talking about. So first one, sharing options. Now, before the days of SharePoint, right, sharing Excel actually meant what? Well, opening Outlook, add an attachment, and send, right? Now, I probably don't need to tell you the issues that come with that, right? But even if we talk about today, sharing Excel, okay, SharePoint, great within a company. Sharing with outside people, okay, you got Teams, which is still kind of SharePoint for files, but you need to invite guests. And then guests are kind of an issue within channels, and you get into weird situations, not even considering, can we all still open the same Excel and write at the same time? And the story gets kind of murky there. So sharing options with Excel sort of start and end with the same issue. Excel is always going to be a file. So you need to share a file, right? And you need to consume a file. And to consume a file, you always need some sort of a platform that can consume that file. Now, the second one, sort of depending on how versed you are in Excel, if you're a beginner in Excel, then you don't even know refresh is an issue. Because you do your sum, it always works. What's there to talk about? But as soon as you start pivot tables, multiple pivot tables, different caches, right? The refresh all suddenly makes sense. Now you know why that button's there. But then you create Power Queries. You've got the model. You have many pivot tables. Some are Power Pivot tables, some are just pivot tables. Now the refresh all, you're not even sure if it did everything, so you press it 3 times, or you got your system, right? But refreshing is always kind of a, if you got a complicated Excel file, you're not really sure. Is it the last one? Let's refresh again and let's see, right? So refreshing options are something to consider when we're talking about Excel. Next one, probably the kind of biggest one, is different audiences. So let's say I create the perfect get from folder that Ken just taught me. So I do it that way, right? And then I, of course, load it into a model so I can use the cube formulas, right? And I do all that, but now I got an issue. I created a report, and I want 7 people to see it, but I want them to see it differently. So one person should see that report for all the countries. Another one is just a country manager for Bulgaria, so I want them to see Bulgaria only, right? Now, how do I solve that? Now, you're talking different applications. How do I solve that in Excel? It's easy. Is that me? Who's calling me? Now, this is amazing. I gotta tell that he's one of the biggest fans of Bulgarian Excel Days, so when he's gonna see that he was actually part of it, he's gonna love it. I do apologize for this. Okay, so different audiences, how do I share with different people the same report, but they should see different things? And usually in Excel, sadly, that means save as Bulgaria, delete everything that's not Bulgaria, save, I'm going to send this one to him, this one to him. But now it becomes an issue. What if I want to change something in the query? Oh my God, now I need to open this file, change it, this file, change it, this file, change it, right? It's not as easy as all that. So different audiences do become an issue at some point, at least in big companies. And then a finished report. A finished report with a question mark is all about this. And whomever here has built reports in their lives, you're going to connect to this story. So you build your report. It's exactly as was requested. It's even got the pie chart. You don't like it, but you did it, right? You put it out there, and then for like 15 minutes, life is good. Until the first person checks it, and he says, oh, but this pie chart, there's like 70 countries in there. We don't see anything. Could you change that? What I'm trying to get at is building reports is never like a, here's the start, here's the end, I'm done story. It's always kind of a circular thing. So I start, I do my job, here's the end, which is really just the beginning of version 2, and then beginning of version 3, and so on, right? So a finished report with a question mark, the answer is never, right? But how can we solve that, right? We can teach everyone Excel perfectly, and they'll be able to finish it themselves, but then what if somebody wants the pie chart, but somebody doesn't? Oh my God. Now I need to save as just because of different audiences. So we kind of, have this, all these questions wrapped everywhere. And the last one, I don't know, well, the last one, I don't know if you know the acronym. The last one is AMA, which basically means Ask Me Anything. There's more and more AMA sessions going on these days. Even Microsoft's doing them. So Ask Me Anything, the scenario I want you to imagine is just this. Huge board meeting is happening. You're presenting your perfect report. It's got the months, it's got the weeks. And the first question you get, well, what is quarter 3? And you go, well, first of all, if you're in a board meeting, you don't really know Excel. So you're thinking, okay, I'll need to get those people to do this for me, right? And you go like, we'll meet again in like 3 days, and I'll get you the quarterly numbers, right? But in a sense, these days, we want things fast and we want it now, right? Maybe even yesterday. So the idea is, okay, if they ask me anything, I need to make my reports actionable. What would that mean in Excel? Well, you got the pivot table, you got the dates, you can group by anything. So if they ask you about quarters, you got them, right? And then they ask you about fiscal years, and then you're done. But until then, you're good, right? So the idea of this AMA is, how do we make our reports actionable? And just before I jump into Power BI, I just want to say one more thing, which is the way I usually represented Power BI, but these days I don't really think about it that way, but the way I usually said is, I think that's how Excel would look if they could start over, or build it for today's data needs, right? I see sad faces. Excel is never going away, but the idea of that statement is, even with Excel, it's 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, Excel had how many rows? 65,000, right? But big data was already a word. It was a big word. And big data meant you have millions of rows. Where are you going to put that? By the time Excel had millions of rows, and that was just theoretically, if you do a sum if, you're done. But theoretically, you have millions of rows. But by that time, the data sets were tens of millions. Luckily, Power Pivot came along. Luckily, other things happened. But, right, the application, because it's got a 30-year history, just wasn't able to adapt as fast as people expected, at least these days, right? So, here it is. Now, I was actually going to spin this up in like 10 minutes, but that went out the window when we were late. So I'm just going to show you the built version. But this is Power BI. So Power BI starts with this. Get data, and then you go get data, and let me just show you what that looks like. And you're going to recognize this as your favorite window in Excel, and you're going to recognize this as your favorite error in Excel. Obviously, we should close this. But what is this? Power Query, right? So Power BI, to get the data, you're just using Power Query. It's almost the same Power Query than in Excel, just a tiny bit more fancy. And then, once you bring in your data, what you're doing is basically this. You're building a data model. Now, for those of you that haven't built data models before, this is Power Pivot. This is exactly what Mark did today. He said, oh my God, I have 3 tables, and I cannot use them all in one pivot table, so let me build a model. Let me say, you know what, this has got salesperson ID, that's got salesperson ID, let's just connect the two, right? So this is basically the core of Power BI. It's the model. If this is not done right, then nothing works. But from here, this is where things get really interesting, right? So first thing you should know about Power BI wasn't on the list, but Power BI is not an endless array of rows and columns like Excel is. Power BI is reports. And reports have length and they have width. You can think about them as PDF pages if you want to, right? So you're building reports. But in Excel kind of idea, you're building reports on steroids. And let me explain. So first of all, what you got to your right is just your data model with all the fields, right? And the fields mean, and this is like using pivot tables, means that I can go, oh, I need a business unit, oh, I need total revenue, there you go. Now, the cool part about these visuals, right, is I'm building kind of pivot table-like experience of building, but I can get many different things from this. Not all are sensible right now, but I can get many different visualizations with the same experience. But these visualizations are kind of, again, brilliant towards Excel pivot tables, because Excel pivot tables can only be managed by a single thing, and that is a slicer, right? And you can connect it to multiple pivot tables, and it seems like you've hacked life when you got a single slicer and everything changes. Well, in Power BI, there's another cool thing, which is if I click on this, that's not supposed to happen. If I click on this, I've actually filtered everything else. So in Power BI, each visual acts as if it's a filter, which I'm not sensing the love, but which is brilliant, right? Because now my chart can be the filter. I don't need slicers for anything. Like I got my year slicer here, but this year slicer, and let me show you on this one, let me take year out of calendar. If I'll ever find it, there it is, right? I can even have it as a visual. I can have a chart by year which can act as a slicer. So it's basically doing two things at once, right? And that's kind of a brilliant idea of Power BI, but if you know anything about data visualization and you're looking at this, you're saying, yeah, I can show this to my 5-year-old, but not to the management board, right? And here's where it gets cool. Because Power BI, the way it has grown, really showed something to me that was amazing. There was a lot of people out there that were just searching for something like this. Because the way the community has grown and the way it has developed, the product and the add-ins is amazing. And one way it has developed is in the way of visualizations. Now, let me go totally off the rails, and let me do this. Let me say I have a boss, and I'm only creating this for him. The rest don't count. He's my direct boss, so, the rest don't count. He's a big fishing guy. He does fishing all the time. So what I'm thinking is, I need to show him numbers. But how can I show him numbers so that he will be satisfied, right? And I start like this. I'm going to bring in a visual, and let me go by this, right? And already, I'm off to a great start. I have the aquarium, right? And now I just need to visualize something, so let me visualize total revenue. And there are my little, where are they? Oh my God. Here you go, right? A brilliant thing. And what's so brilliant about this visual, right now it's showing me countries. I can go, show me customers, man. What's my biggest fish? There it is. Oh. It kind of gets better, even though you should never do this in real life. But it kind of gets better. What if these were, and let's go to countries again. What if these were actually my suppliers? Then I could take this, and I could change this into sharks. Now that, I think my boss would really appreciate this, all right? So again, you should never do anything like this. But what I'm getting at is, in Power BI, you can. There's a visual that does this. And now I'm going to go way back to, I've got this to show. How can I show it better? And immediately, just by using custom visuals, these are Zebra BI visuals, which are already IBCS, It doesn't get better than this. Business reporting doesn't get better than this. So I got my months, but not only months. I have my comparisons to, this says previous year. I'm pretty sure it's planned, but it could be previous year. Not only by what the difference was, also by percentage points. And this seems like I calculated 4 things. What's the actual, what's the previous year, what's the difference, and what's the percentage difference? And if I show you, apparently I can't. Let me try again. Apparently I can't again. Let me try again. There you go. I'm closer. This has 2 measures. That's it. The actual and previous year. What is cool is I can, well, not here, somewhere else. I think here, yeah, I could also make it year to date in one go. I could also make it slightly different. I could make it a waterfall. I could also make it a waterfall by divisions to have small multiples right on the fly. I could do so many things, and it's all already, if we think about it, this is already IBCS. So it's business reporting as it should be, with everything that I showed you before. So this filters everything else, right? If I click it, it filters this. If I click this, it filters that. So I got those things working. Then there's another thing I can do, and that should sort of blow your mind. With reports, you need 2 things. And I'm not even talking about call to action, but somehow with reports, you need to create focus points. Because if you just got 10,000 numbers, nobody knows what they're looking at, right? How do we create focus points? Well, in this report, I can just go, you know what? This November number, we need to check this. So I'm just going to add a comment here. Someone should check this. And there it is. Now, I have focus points, which are still live reporting, with comments. And the comments are fancy, because comments are not just comments. They're also tied to data points, and they show you some details on them. So, do we agree this is brilliant? Then I can continue. Second thing this does is, everyone has always dreamt of, but never got, a single-page report that would do everything, right? And in Power BI, you sort of have 2 ways of doing that. The first one is, if I just hover over this, it's actually a report within a report. These are called tooltips. But they're not just reports within a report. So I'm now on May. Let me filter to only this. I'm going back to May. Of course, you remember the previous numbers, and you know these are now different because they're filtered to this, right? So the way this is produced is I basically have 2 reports in one. And then you get just slightly better when I do something like this, and I so hope this is going to work, but it's not going to because I didn't prepare. But there is something called a drill through, where you basically have a report that can take you to another report and take you back seamlessly with keeping all the filters, right? So what I like about Power BI, what I basically love about Power BI is you can create this single-page report that do so much more than what is just obvious, right? Can do so much more. So this is brilliant. Now, let me bring in another point. Remember when I said different audiences in Excel? That was one of the points, right? So different audiences here basically mean this. In Power BI, I can create something called a row. And a row means this. I'm going to create a row. Oh, I already did. That's amazing. So I created a row called Bulgaria. And what this row does is it filters all my data to only customers from Bulgaria. And what this also does is, this report, which now shows the entire world, if I view it as a Bulgarian role, you never would guess what I'm going to see. Well, that little dot, you recognize it, right? So I'm only viewing Bulgaria. And that is so cool because it's still just a single report, but it behaves differently depending on the role with which I'm approaching it, right? And now let me go, before I put this onto the service and show you how's it working there, let me show you one more really cool thing, and that is this. In Power BI, we're basically creating a model. Now, the data model is kind of ancient wording for what is now called a semantic model. Now, the semantic model kind of stands for this. Let me show you. I have a calculation here, and it's called total revenue. So I got a measure here, it's called total revenue. What I can do is I can say, you know what? I'm going to call this show me the money. I'm also going to call this income. And since I'm here, what do you guys have? Levy? Okay. Lions. So show me lions, right? And now I said, so look, this is going to be viewed by different people, and I want them to be able to talk to this field in their own words, right? And I also have something here called customers, and you guys call them clienti, right? Clienti, there you go. So let me do that. And now that I got this, now I can talk to my data. Now I can go, show me lions by clienti. And there you go. Right? And I can also go, so I really don't like the way it presented data because you should never put it on a x-axis if it's not time. You should do it like a bar chart. So let me just fix that on bar chart. There you go. So basically, you're talking to your data and getting something back, something that didn't exist before. Do you see where this is going? Kind of? Well, remember my example when I said, I'm showing monthly data, but somebody asks me for quarter free? Show me lions where quarter is Q free. There you go. We got that many lions, right? So the idea of this becomes really apparent once we show, well, okay, now I built some report. Now what am I supposed to do with this? Well, now I'm going to hit publish. And as soon as I do that, well, I should probably save it. This is the critical point of this presentation. If this doesn't work, then this is the end of the presentation. So, Bulgarian Excel Days 2024. Replace. Oh, I even had a backup. Wouldn't be the end. You shouldn't say things like that. You're calling the evil spirits of demo. Oh, there you go, success. There was no doubt. Well, now there's doubt. Now there's bigger doubt. I said this is a critical point. We all knew it. Okay, so this is Power BI's service. Once you publish your reports, they're no longer a file. Now they live in the service. Now I can consume them on this. Now I can consume them on anything that has a browser or a Power BI app, which is not Power BI Desktop, just the app. But it kind of gets better because what I'm doing here is I'm building these workspaces, right? And I got my this acronym, well, Bulgarian Excel Days workspace, and I got my data set, and I could now go, you know what? Let me deal with security on this data set. And I got a role called Bulgaria, and I can say, you know what? When my 6-year-old son is going to be watching this report, I want him to see only Bulgaria. There you go. And with that, a single report now serves multiple roles or multiple people, and I just have a single point of where I need to edit, where I need to refresh, and everything works for different people. But it gets even better. And the way it gets better is, and we're getting close to where it's the ultimate better. So if somebody's consuming this report, right? It's over here, they work exactly as intended, so you got the same features you had there. But remember when I said nobody's really satisfied with the report that you've done? So now they can say, you know what? I don't really need this left part, but this I like. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to pin it. And I'm going to pin it to my own dashboard. So I'll create my dashboard. I'll call it Gašper. There it is. And now I have this visualization on my dashboard. And now I can go to multiple other reports, right? Actually, let me go back to this one. And I can say, okay, so from this other page, from this one, I really like this one. So let me pin this. So I'm just pinning different parts and creating my own dashboard. But it gets even better, because if I cannot find a piece of information, I can go up here and just have a conversation with my data, show me lions, and I'm guessing you see where this is going, right? I can go where quarter is Q3, and there are my lions, right? So it's actionable, but it gets better, almost for the last time. Now I can say, oh, but this visual doesn't exist anywhere, but I like it. Let me pin it to my dashboard. So from now on, I have my own report, which contains this visual. And because it's a card visual, I could even manage alerts and say, if this goes below 5 million, send me an email. Right? So I could do crazy things here. But the craziest part is, and this is where you're going to see, this is kind of really, really modern way of doing it, is if I now need to present this data. Right? So I got my Excel report, how do I present? PowerPoint, exactly. So let me export this to PowerPoint. I have exactly 1 minute, so what could possibly go wrong? There you go. So this is my PowerPoint presentation. I'm starting. And what's great about it is, well, when it loads, what is great about it is, okay, it's my report, right? But now you say, well, okay, that's 2017. What happened in 2018? Let's go. This is what happened in 2018. So I'm presenting, but I'm presenting live. So obviously lunch did you no favors, because this is probably the coolest thing, well, not to take anything away, but this is probably the coolest thing you've seen. This is the pinnacle, and there's another pinnacle to this, and the pinnacle would be, and I cannot show it, that's cool, but if I went like this, so if my presentation started with this one, I would get the same thing, but I would actually get a PowerPoint slide where you could ask me anything, and I could talk to my data and create visualizations from our data on the fly. Right? Right? Yeah. There you go. Okay. So, because I'm also